Imagine a torture method so gruesome it defined an entire civilization. The victim's back is sliced open, ribs severed from the spine with an axe, and lungs pulled out to flutter against the bloody gore like wings. You've seen it in TV shows like Vikings, and you've undoubtedly shuddered at the thought of it. But stop believing everything Hollywood tells you about the Northmen. What if I told you that the most infamous execution method in history is likely nothing more than a typo, a simple translation error that spiraled out of control? To understand how a grammatical mistake became a legendary torture method, we have to go back to the dark, ink-stained libraries of the 12th century. The blood eagle is the ultimate symbol of Viking brutality. It fits perfectly with the image of ruthless raiders terrorizing Europe. The story usually goes that Ragnar Lothbrok's sons performed this ritual on King Aelle of Northumbria as revenge for their father's death. It sounds epic, it sounds metal, and it cements the idea that Vikings were sadistic savages. But there is a massive problem with this narrative. Contemporary sources, the people actually living during the Viking Age, don't mention it. Not once. We have zero archaeological evidence of bodies found in this condition. The vivid descriptions of the blood eagle only appear in sagas written hundreds of years after the events supposedly took place. So, where did these writers get their information? This is where the story starts to unravel. Historians like Roberta Frank have spent decades analyzing the original Old Norse poetry. The controversy hinges on a single stanza of skaldic verse. The original text might simply mean, "An eagle tore at his back." This is a common poetic metaphor for leaving a dead enemy on the battlefield for carrion birds to eat. It wasn't a ritual, it was just the reality of war. But later Christian scribes, who didn't understand the nuance of the old poetry, took the metaphor literally. They misinterpreted eagle on the back as a specific ritualistic action of carving an eagle. They took a poetic description of a bird eating a corpse and turned it into a procedural manual for torture. But wait, because the deception goes even deeper than just bad grammar. The reason this myth survived isn't just an accident. It was a calculated political move. You have to consider who was writing history in the Middle Ages. It wasn't the Vikings, it was the Christian monks who were terrorized by them. These authors had a clear agenda. They wanted to portray the Vikings as demonic, inhuman pagans. By inventing a torture method that mocked the human form and desecrated the body, they turned their own defeated kings into holy martyrs. It's much better for the church if King Edmund died a saintly death under a pagan torture ritual than if he just fell in battle like a regular soldier. The blood eagle wasn't a Viking ritual. It was Christian propaganda designed to villainize the enemy. It allowed the church to say, "Look at what these monsters do. This is why we must fight them." Let's look at this from a purely biological perspective. Could you actually perform a blood eagle? Modern medical experts have weighed in, and the verdict is unlikely. To sever the ribs from the spine requires immense force and specific tools. It is anatomically incredibly difficult to perform on a living person without killing them instantly. But here is the kicker. The moment you open the chest cavity that wide, the lungs collapse. Immediately. The diaphragm can no longer function. The victim would die of suffocation or shock within seconds. The terrifying imagery of the victims screaming while their lungs flutter on their back, it's physiologically impossible. The show would be over before it even began. So, we are left with a choice. We can believe the exciting, bloody legend that pop culture loves, or we can accept the quieter, drier, historical reality. The Vikings were certainly violent people, but they were also practical. They killed efficiently. They didn't need theatrical surgery to prove a point. The Blood Eagle remains one of history's most enduring ghost stories, a myth created by enemies, mistranslated by scholars, and amplified by screenwriters who know that blood sells. It tells us less about what the Vikings actually did, and more about what we want to believe about the past. Now I want to turn this over to you. Does knowing the Blood Eagle is likely a myth change how you view the Vikings, or do you think the legend is just too good of a story to let go of? Let me know your stance in the comments below.